Well, thank you for joining me. In this brief lecture, we're going to focus on answering the question, how is it that distributors add value? We know that by their mere presence and existence, distributors need to add some type of value, otherwise they wouldn't be utilized. But we'll discuss specifically how they do add value. Before we get to that, though, I'd like to highlight the purpose of distribution, and I think it's important that we establish some of the framework, if you will, before we begin to discuss some of the finer points on how is it that distributors actually add value. So the first thing is that what is the strategy of distribution? Distribution really involves getting the right product to the right person at the right place at the right time. We are trying to get our products from the locations at which they are produced to ultimately where it is that they can be consumed or purchased to be consumed by our customers. We know that through market segmentation we've developed a set of characteristics in which our customers share, and so we know ultimately what types of products are going to fit with their wants and needs. We know ultimately how to promote or communicate information about our products to reach them. We know how to price them. But we also have to get our products in convenient locations where they're going to shop at, but also at the right time, and so that's another variable that we need to consider. Now, as far as the elements of distribution that kind of comprise the whole distribution strategy piece, the first thing that we look at are what are called distribution channels. And distribution channels are actually the route that a product takes from where it is produced to where it is consumed. And so, for example, one of the common distribution channels is what we call a retail distribution channel. And so how a retail distribution channel works is there are a number of what we call intermediaries that are involved in the process and that move the products along in that distribution channel to get that to the end consumer. And so let's look, for example, at a retail distribution channel. Well, the first thing you do is you start with the actual producer. And the producer is the person or the business that actually creates the product or service. But even before that, we usually have to get some of the smaller components. And so, for example, if you take the business of creating orange juice, for example, the producer, you would say, is the person that ultimately takes the oranges, grinds them down, and actually produces it, puts in some different ingredients and things to create orange juice and have it bottled. But even before that, I have to actually obtain the oranges from somewhere. I get them from a farmer, and so on and so forth. And so they're involved in the distribution channel somewhat. They're involved in what we call the supply chain. But as far as distribution, we start with the producer. And then ultimately, we move on to that next stage here. And here we might have a wholesaler. And the wholesaler is going to do a couple different things, but mainly they're going to assist in actually storing some of the different items, which is sometimes beneficial. The wholesaler may then ship to the retailer, and the retailer may sell to ultimately that end user. And so maybe a Target, Walmart, grocery store, anything similar that we can go and actually purchase that. And so there are a lot of players involved in a retail distribution type channel, of course. Now what you need to know is that the more people that are involved in the process, the more costs there are associated with the actual products, because each player involved is going to increase the cost associated with providing its particular services here. And so these all represent channel intermediaries, because they are involved in the process to some degree and they provide some type of value. Now, the other component we need to discuss is what we call the physical distribution. And the physical distribution comes alongside the distribution channels, but the physical distribution is the means to which the products move along. It's the actual process, the logistics that take place to take the product from point A to point B. And so typically, we're talking about such things as transportation. And so there are a number of different ways to get products from point A to point B. You can use airplanes, you can use trucks, you can use ships, You can use a wide variety of different ways of actually physically transporting the product from point A to point B. Now, obviously, there's trade-offs there, right? Typically, you deal with cost on one end, but you also deal with timeliness or speed of transportation. Those are two variables that come up frequently. We also have issues such as flexibility, such as the ability to track them and all those other things that are considered by businesses before they start to engage in a specific physical distribution channel, if you will. Now that we know that ultimately some groundwork on distribution, the strategy, and the two components, distribution channels and physical distribution, we're ready to address how is it the distributors add value. The first of which is that they actually reduce transactions. And this is a very important component, and this is why distributors are utilized very heavily. And if you think about it this way, if we are a retailer, or we're a producer here, and we manufacture something, product XYZ, you can fill in the blanks, and we're going to ship to our, millions of consumers. Well, now you have all of these different consumers, and we have to ship to every single one of them. And so what that does is that increases our cost because of the transactions that we have. We're shipping to numerous different locations in a wide geographic area as opposed to maybe one location. And so the value that can be provided in this case is instead of having the actual producer ship to all of these different locations, what you can do is if you add one intermediary along this process, and now this one individual is shipping to all of those locations, but us, as the actual producer, we're only shipping to one location. And so that adds value because we know that we only have to ship to one location. We know that it's going to minimize our cost to a significant degree. We don't have as many transactions to a number of different areas because we're shipping to one destination only, which can provide a lot of value. Now, some retailers, most notably Walmart, they handle their own distribution. And so they have distribution facilities located in different areas in the United States and across the world. They ship to those locations, and from those locations, they, of course, truck out different products or different goods to all of the stores in the area. So retailers and businesses can handle their own distribution. But if you're a smaller company, it isn't feasible for you to make the investments to purchase trucks and large warehouses and planes and those different types of things. And so maybe you would utilize a wholesaler in this case to actually assist you with the shipping process in order to reduce your transactions. Now, the other thing in which they provide value is distributors also reduce storage costs. One of the significant benefits of using a wholesaler, for a retailer that is that instead of you having to store all of the inventory in your own location, your own physical premises, you can actually have it stored at another facility off-site. And so you might ask, well, what's the significance of that? Well, one, you don't have to actually store it. So as a retailer, your primary goal is to sell items. And so if you're devoting space to actually holding inventory that's not being sold, then you're jeopardizing real estate that could be used to market different products. And so that puts you at a disadvantage because now you're taking up actual floor space to actually store things. And so instead, it's very common for retailers to utilize a wholesaler for the purpose of actually storing those particular products, and then they only transport them when there is an actual need to do so. Another area is when you store certain things, typically you insure the actual goods themselves. That way, in the event that they're damaged or stolen for any reason, then obviously you have some recourse to make a claim there on the value of those particular goods. Now, so that's another area. But the primary component is obviously eliminating the need to have to store items in a particular area, and you can now use that space as a way to sell other products and services, or sell other products, maybe even services if you're set up for that, because you're limited from a retail standpoint. Of course, at least most stores are limited from a space standpoint. So I hope that helps answer the question ultimately how distributors or intermediaries add value. First, obviously, reducing transactions, right? And then secondly, of course, reducing storage costs. Thanks for joining. Have a great day.